Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Earworm Podcast. I'm Bryan Clark.
I'm Patrick Cloud.
And today we're going to be talking about the craft of songwriting, different types of songs, architecture of songs, and the culture in which songs exist.
And I'm here to listen.
Me too. Okay, so think about this. What does that mean for us? Well, we all are familiar with songs, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands that we've heard throughout our lives, and some of those are our absolute favorites. What goes into that? How does the song get made? Now, everyone has a different creative process.
Sure.
Right? But we're not talking about that. What we want to talk about is some of the basic ingredients that when you boil down the components to great songs or songs, they all have a kind of an architecture to them.
Sure.
And sometimes people are unaware of that basic architecture. So I think that's the fun part about what this episode is going to be talking about today.
Yeah, we'll break it down simply, kind of like a grammar diagraph, like a sentence diagraph, and just and get the small parts. We're not going to get into the real nitty-gritty of what a master musician is going to do when they craft their composing. But we'll talk about the basics, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the heavy stuff too, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's not really, unless you're going to be a composer.
If we're doing more than the basics, I'm leaving.
Right, song styles like AABA Cab, never sung by Captain Ahab. Earworm stuck in my mind, can't get it out this time. Yo-ho, earworm blows the sails of the song ship. There she goes.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So, you're keeping it real. Okay, so
that's my role in this relationship.
Okay, so let's think about this. Let's look at the basic types of songs. And when we say types, we're going to talk about the form of the song, like what's the architecture of the song.
Let's define it through genre real quick, though.
Okay.
Because different genres might have different structures and architectures. Some genres don't have vocals, right?
Right, yeah.
Or lyrics.
Yeah.
Some of them stay the same throughout the entire song. Mm-hmm. But there's, genres like improvisational jazz and stuff that we're probably not going to talk about all that much. We're really going to talk about more of the popular culture in music.
Yeah, we want to focus on pop music in particular, because if we start talking about French stuff, then we'll be here for eternity.
And I'll be bored.
Yeah, and I will be too. Yeah. Because there's so much variation with the absolute expression of humanity. No one podcast in 1 hour can encapsulate that.
Yeah, we're going to try, but no, I'm just kidding.
So let's think about that. Okay. Let's look at the different types of forms. And this is kind of an interesting thing because there are basically four main types of forms in a song. And we're going to have lots of audio examples today, everyone, so you'll kind of get the idea of it. And we may play some of your all-time favorite songs. Who knows? So basically, we want to look back at when did humanity possibly start writing songs? What went into a song? What are the components of a song? Well, okay, before we even talk about the architecture, we got to talk about what's really in a song.
Yeah.
We know we're going to need words.
Yep.
We know we're going to need a melody and possibly maybe some accompaniment to it, some chords to go underneath that melody and those words, right? And it's kind of interesting because it goes in line with what we know about copyright in some of our past episodes, which is you can only copyright the words and the melody. You can't copyright the chord progression.
Right. And we'll continue to get in trouble with that today.
Exactly. So basically what I want you guys to remember and what we want to talk about today is there's four basic types, and we'll explain them in detail here in a little bit. But the basic one is, starting with number one, is the strophic form. This has everything to do with poetry, and it could be iambic pentameter, it could be haiku, it could be a sonnet. They all have a structure with the foot and the meter and where the stress levels are. So basically, if you have a set of syllables that you are trying to relate, regardless of whether it rhymes, and rhyme scheme comes into play, obviously, with most songs, right? The last syllable, the last vowel of each line of a song typically rhymes with the preceding ones, or there's some alternation where you can guess a pattern.
Yeah,
just
but
like
also
in poetry.
Not ever necessary.
Absolutely. Right. We're not saying these are rules.
Yeah.
We're just saying this is kind of what happens.
Structurally, you will see that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and we love when rules are broken.
Yeah.
100%. So, but in general, as a general guideline. So if we know that, then what you end up happening is a lot of times you might have the same amount of syllables, the same melodic line, and it just repeats over and over and over again. Now, there's a lot of scholarly research that goes in to say that early forms of Greek drama, so the Odyssey is out now, and it's a very popular movie by Christopher Nolan, which you liked immensely, yeah?
I have opinions.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ashamed of them.
If we were a film podcast, we could do an hour on the Odyssey.
Yeah, right. Sure. Okay, cool.
In fact, maybe we will.
Well, but okay, but let me ask this question to you. Did you think it was too loud?
I thought it was too loud.
Me too. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. We're in agreement.
Yeah.
All right. That's my only opinion. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So, okay.
So if we talk about this idea of a strophic form, the early Greeks basically started to use melody encapsulated with memorizing thousands and thousands of lines of text, essentially, the narrative of the play. They started to use different mnemonic devices by employing melody. So if you could sing it.
But originally, and I don't know if you noticed this in the movie, and I'm sure that you did, is that the whole movie was in iambic pentameter.
Yeah.
Which was a departure because originally it was not. It was in a different strophic form. Mm-hmm. But it was really awesome. I thought Travis Scott did a really great job of kind of translating the bard and the way that maybe that's how it was performed, right? Maybe that's how the Odyssey in general, the entire was performed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool conjecture. It's a cool thing to be able to contemplate because there's a lot of scholarly research that does it. So as we get into this kind of filters into sort of the late Renaissance and where we started getting into the Florentine Camerata in Italy and Florence. And these folks started to get back involved with ancient Greek culture, and it influences their modern form of artistic expression. And the net result of that, the progeny, if you will, is opera. And so opera started to have form, and it was basically done in two ways. And believe me, I'm not just being historical just for the sake of this. This is actually going to matter when we talk about our song forms. But basically, the opera advances its drama, its narrative, in what's called a recitative, which is basically, that's when there's like, it's not a song. They're just sort of like scat singing a narrative.
It's dialogue and narrative.
It's dialogue.
Yeah.
But when someone really wants to reflect on an emotional component, now the aria starts.
The aria, yeah.
Right? This is when the fat lady sings, the proverbial fat lady sings. So,
and anybody that does, I mean, a lot of people don't know much about opera, but they've heard an aria. Yeah. Right? Because all of the famous opera moments are aria. And they even name it aria, even if it's taken out of the context of the whole
there's
opera.
So many, there's thousands, literally, that opera is an amazing art form. It's like a movie. It's like a modern day theater.
And this is post-strophic structure, right?
Yeah.
Because
I want
to kind of sit on that for a second because I want to make sure that people understand that strophic means that there is only one part that's repeated throughout the entire song. And you've heard this a few times in history and in some songs. Yeah. Gordon Lightfoot was when you showed me, which is a great example. Yeah. And it felt like a sea shanty in a lot of ways. And if you ever hear the pirate yo ho ho in a barrel of rum, same way, same song all the way through. And it's just the same part in repetition. Now the lyrics change, but typically the melody even stays the same. Now there might have like a minor resolve or a major resolve that'll change throughout the song, even though it's repeated. Mm-hmm. But usually it's pretty close to the same exact
Absolutely, you're
melody.
totally right. Yeah. So let's listen to a little bit of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which to me is actually one of my favorite songs from the 70s. I love this. And by the way, anecdotal, this song was a first take.
That's wild.
It's a 6.5 minute song about a true story.
Sounds like Mazzy Star right now.
Right. It's a nice, beautiful Dorian melody. It's gorgeous.
Dorian, also Greek.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down to the big lake.
And it's basically this shipwreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's a true story. But listen to how it's the same melody. It goes down a fifth at the end, right?
Right.
And it's the same thing again. Here it is again. Same chord progression, same basic flow. The meter, everything is the same, this pace. It never changes, this entire song. Now, their question would be for the producers and the musicians would be like, how are we going to keep this interesting for 6.5 minutes? They do some really cool things in this song that I think make it really interesting, which is they delay the entrance to the drums almost. If it was a normal 3 minute and 30-second song, it's like 2/3 of the way through the song. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But they take little pauses here. They do a little turn on a little cadence, and then they get back to the work and to the lyrics of the story. Anyway, but you can hear, and then we have the melody again. And that's basically the vocal melody again. It's just being restated in the guitar. Okay, so that's a good example of what strophic is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when you think of any of those epic poems and a lot of even some Shakespeare, it's all that. It's all strophic. It's all stays the same throughout the entire thing. And you could be reading it for hours, or having it performed for hours in the same thing. Now you get dynamic changes in delivery, right? Which is kind of one of the ways to make it interesting is if you're playing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But bringing your voice and building it over a period of a song or something like that. Yeah. Those changes in dynamics, essentially, are what would keep people listening.
And also, you could change the mode. You could change it from minor to major in certain sections. And that's where this early modal system, which is named after the Greeks, right? So for those of you who are not very familiar with music theory, there are 7 basic modes in the major scale. There's modes in any scale, but majority of the music that we listen to in a popular way stems from the major scale, and there are 7 modes, which is Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian modes.
Now, what I loved about this piece of history is that these were assigned by feeling to these tribes in Greece.
Yep.
So it was like if there were a warlike tribe, you had a more aggressive mode that's assigned to them, etc. So I thought that was a really cool.
Yeah.
Were the Lydians cool, man?
Right. It was based on their character and their. I know. It's pretty interesting.
And the Mixolydians were like the weirdos.
I think that's cool. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's almost like a proto version of how every nation has their own national anthem.
Sure.
It's almost like a proto version of that.
Which, by the way, the World Cup turned me on to a few of those bangers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to know that our national anthem is as old as it is.
Yeah.
But some of these countries have modern music as their national anthem. I thought that was a really interesting, it was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah. So going back to that, so this was a good case of the Dorian mode, which is a minor mode with a natural 6 for those of you who are theory inclined. But basically that's what Gordon Lightfoot is singing over this whole entire song. Okay?
Another note about modes as well is that specific styles of music use specific modes almost exclusively.
Yeah.
And now they all change up and everybody's got an opportunity to use whatever they want. But you'll hear certain modes in certain types of music more often than others. So,
they do.
Like salsa. It's
they relate an emotional thing. Where I really can hear lots of modal mixture going on is, of course, in more advanced music, more chromatic music, but certainly for those of you who aren't jazz fans or any of that nature, you probably are very familiar with film scores because you go to movies. And when you listen to a film score, you're going to see all kinds. Like typically, and there's a moment in E.T. where Elliot and E.T. are in the bike and they take off. Lydian mode. John Williams knows all these modes, very, very well because he's borrowing from the composers of the past. But all of these modes. So the Lydian makes us feel light and airy. A whole tone scale is going to make us feel really dreamy and sort of tripped out. Like, you're coming out of some type of hallucination.
Like Leia's theme.
Yeah, right? But then there's others that are much more like, Phrygian in nature that get used, which is to your point about the genre. If you think about metal, overwhelmingly in Phrygian mode.
Yeah.
Right? Because they got that flat 2 that's going to the...
And we're not talking about Archspire.
No, we're talking about metal.
Because I don't even know what modes they would use. It's just so fast it doesn't even matter. They're chopping it all down.
That's right. Not a sponsor yet.
Not a sponsor. Right. Come on.
That's right.
Come on the show, Archspire.
No, but so we, you've got all those really great things that you can do to elicit an emotional response. So it makes sense to change the mode based on where you are in this drama if you're reciting an ancient Greek play or singing it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting.
So right.
Very cool.
So as we move into Florentine Camerata and this whole thing that happens in Florence where there is a renaissance of classic Greco culture.
And this is like the introduction of blues, you know what I mean, at that point for in a modern way. Like blues was such a different thing. It was such a huge move, so much different than anything that had come before.
Yeah.
This was kind of the same way. Right?
In a
musical
way,
revolution.
Yeah, they were basically, they were discovering what they thought was components of a past civilization and going, let's check this out.
Wow.
So, and it led to something that they didn't even anticipate, which is opera. But in opera, we talked about the recitative, advancing the narrative, and then when the characters reflect on the emotional component of what has just happened, that's usually the aria. Well, it's basically the same thing with a pop song. Because a pop song, unless it's strophic, that's telling a story, and overwhelmingly strophic form songs just tell a story. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, whatever it is.
Not Maiden. Not Iron Maiden.
I mean,
good old STC. Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
Exactly. So Coleridge is that. But like anything that's going to be that way, where it's just this epic poem, it's probably going to be in strophic form. Right? Because there's no emotion.
Drop your favorite one in the comments.
That's right. A lot of great Woody Guthrie songs, early Bob Dylan, strophic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next kind of song form that really comes on to the scene, and I'm thinking more about historical timeline than, what's blazing up and down the charts.
Sure.
So is the blues. Right. And blues originally, if you get out of this sort of, the blues is kind of like this cool conglomeration of Scotch-Irish influence and certainly what's happening coming from the African importation into the southern part of the United States, which is our neck of the woods in New Orleans. Right. And that was such a hotbed of this interface. Right. So you had the pentatonic scale, which is inherently a predominant part of African folk music.
Yeah.
It's just not a part of European folk music, right? Especially, sort of from Ireland and Wales and the United Kingdom. So when you get into this weird, sort of like your chocolates in my peanut butter moment of this new American thing, we start to get blues. We start to get the fiddles that were coming down from the European side, but then the banjo, which is inherently an African instrument, starts coming up. And then you start to get the guitar and everything else. And now things are ripe. So in the sort of Mississippi Delta region of the United States, we start to get a proliferation of what we now know as blues. And through the Lomax recordings and some of the others, Harry Smith anthologies and stuff, these early ethnomusicologists would go down to essentially these farmlands and record sharecroppers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And something was in the water.
Oh, man.
Because there was a gateway to hell there.
Right? Robert Johnson at the Crossroads.
That's right.
Yeah. So all of that stuff is happening. But what's a blues? When people talk about blues, they're like, what is blues? It's more than just the scale. It's more than just the solo and a bent note. And wow, it's much more than that, right? There's an architecture, and typically it's been reduced, and not all blues forms and songs are this way, but overwhelmingly they're 12 bars long. So when I say bar, I don't mean the bar that you're going to go order 12 drinks from. I mean that it's measures long, 12 measures long.
Right.
And they have a very basic formula. 4 bars of the 1 chord, followed by 2 bars of the 4, another 2 bars of the 1. Then you get a bar of 5, a bar of 4, and the last 2 bars, measures 11 and 12, are what we call the turnaround.
Right.
And that takes you back to the top of the form.
And if, for any guitar players that's listening, it's like this is one of the first things you learn aside from Smoke on the Water.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You learn the 12-bar blues.
Yeah, you learned it. And then you learn to just feel it.
Yeah.
And believe me, even if you've never thought about it before, folks, you can feel it. You're going to feel it because it's in the backbone of like all of the early Sun recordings, Elvis Presley, Hound Dog, and all of the others that he, essentially borrowed from the black community, in Memphis. So let me just play you one of the classics. Here's the OG himself, at least for recorded versions. This is good old Robert Johnson recording this in San Antonio, Texas, 1929.
Man, almost 100 years ago.
Yeah. So that's a quick 4, back to the 1. Here's bar 4, 1, 2, 3. Here's bar 5, goes to the 4 chord. Same. Now, it's going to go back to the 1 chord. Now, second bar of this 1 chord. Here comes the 5 chord right here. Going to the 4 and turn around. Bar 11, 2, 3, 4. Bar 12, 2, 3, and top of the form. Right? Okay. So that's a 12-bar blues. Now, you can get very complex with this.
Yes.
And the 12-bar blues can be rearranged to parts, especially in jazz, that you won't even recognize it. And it's so cool because the musicians know. We keep track of it. For those of you who might be interested, I would recommend Michael Brecker's Delta City Blues. Listen to that because he does a whole New Orleans backline thing on a solo tenor sax before the band comes in, and then they take it out and they come back, but it's still the same 12 bars, the entire song. So that happens quite a bit. So the 12-bar blues is sort of now what we would think of as the backbone to rock and roll. Right? At least in our cultural exposure, we would definitely say, yeah, this is the aquifer that really flooded, early rock and roll, and then later metal and pop and rock.
Oh, and disco and funk. And
exactly.
Yeah,
it's
there's
just
so much of it. Yeah.
Right. Strophic just kind of went by the wayside. It was like, yeah, we're not into this one-line shit.
Right. And it's wild to think that, it was, such a modern thing to think about songwriting in the way that we're talking about, because if that's an introduction, if that's an introduction to the 12-bar blues, and that was 100 years ago, we're talking about a century.
Yeah,
is where we're looking at in this window.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what ends up happening next is that we start to get into an evolution that started to really come into fore in the early part of last century as well, which is the AABA song form. This is a hallmark, staple, patent type of architecture that is prominent in most Broadway shows.
Right. So we've got strophic, which is the basic
one
repetitive
line,
nature.
sort of repeated.
We got the 12-bar blues,
yeah,
which is, like you said, 12 measures.
Yeah, and it's the same type of phrasing.
Same phrasing, right?
Yep.
And it revolves around itself.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Now, the next evolution, like you're saying, also revolves around itself, which I think is interesting.
It does, and it actually has something to do a little bit more with these arias from the Florentine Camerata, because they had basically the arias. When an aria gets sung, just the aria itself usually has a form within it. And it's usually what's called, the early ones are basically a rounded binary form, which basically means you have an A section, then you have a contrasting section, which we'll call B, and then there's a little bit of a truncated version of the A that comes back at the end.
Interesting.
Hence, rounded binary.
Yeah.
Well, if we add another A into that, we have an AABA song form, right? And that's essentially what a lot of these early Tin Pan Alley composers, Gershwin, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lawrence and Hart, all of the classic great writers of the day, overwhelmingly they wrote in this sort of AABA song form. So how do you think that you would be able to identify a modern AABA song form? Because we're definitely not going to be going back and listening to rounded binary arias.
Yeah, that would be boring. And
that'd be a different episode.
Yeah, it's a different episode. It's a very beautiful episode. Some would say. So you have two parts that are the same, like an A. So you verse, chorus, and then it ends with kind of a reference to the verse.
Yeah, so typically
it kind of rounds it back to the beginning.
Yeah, in a way. Or it could repeat the entire A section. Let me give you a classic one here. This is Nat King Cole. This is the Frim Fram Sauce, one of my favorite tunes of his. So you're going to hear at the end of this A section, he's going to say, I want the Frim Fram Sauce with the oisin vey. What's your FIFA on the side? Oh, it's so good. That swing.
I'm never satisfied.
Right, here it is.
I want the fram sauce with the oisin vey. With your FIFA on the side.
Okay, that's the end of an A section. Now, new. It's the same thing. It's just advancing it. It's expanding. It's talking about different areas of the food. But what a great sexual innuendo.
I want the fram sauce with the oisin vey. With your FIFA.
Okay, now we get a B section contrasting, and then listen to the harmony change. Minor.
Really got to eat.
And a fella should eat right. Yeah. 5 will get you 10.
All right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then when you get past that, and then we go back to the A section over here. Right? And then he does the whole thing, and he ends it with, I want the fram sauce with the oisin vey. With your FIFA on the side.
Okay,
right,
so what's something modern that somebody would know as that?
Okay, so yeah, you might go, okay, Brian,
break it down. No, it's good. It's not that it's bad or anything. It's just something that everybody would know.
A modern version of an AABA song form would be like, and I'm going to pick one of the great songwriters, generally acknowledged, Joni Mitchell. So how do we know? It's going to have that title in either the first line or the last line of each A section, and then we'll get to a contrasting bridge section with a perspective will change, and then we're going to get into something that's going to be much more of a recap. So here it is. She's going to talk about taking a drive home from a gig with her husband. So, right, once in a while in a big blue moon, there comes a night like this, like some surrealist invented this. Here's the title of the song. Right here, Night Ride Home. Okay? Now, that's the A section. It's going to repeat, and she's going to elaborate on where they are. She set the hula girls and caterpillar tractors in the sand. So she's describing the scene, but again, 4th of July, Night Ride Home. Now, here's the B section. She tells you who she's with, finally. I love the man beside me. Goes to the 4 chord. And we love the open road. Right? No phones till Friday. Far from the overkill. Far from the overload. And that's this B section. And then when you go back to the A section, it's those 2 A sections again, but she's elaborating on the present moment of where they are. So that's a great version of it. Another one would be Bruce Springsteen's Secret Garden, right? From the Jerry Maguire soundtrack, right? She's got a secret garden that she hides. That's a wonderful song in subtlety and great lyric writing because you don't know who's doing the talking. You don't know if this is the ex-boyfriend talking to Bruce Springsteen, who's been falling in love with this new girl, and he's saying, hey, man, she's got a secret garden that she's going to hide. It doesn't matter where you go. Or is it him being the person who did take that journey going, I'm at the end of my rope and I can never get there? It's just fascinating. It's a wonderful song. Still to this day, you're going to find cutting edge artists still using AABA song form. Right? But that's a typical hallmark way of being able to identify an AABA song
I think
form.
part of it too is like when you definitely know that there's only 2 parts to the song, then you likely it's going to be in that format.
Yeah, and when we're talking about these song forms, everyone don't think for a minute that we're saying they can only be in this format.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
We're boiling things down to like core. It's like we've stripped off the artifice of the building and we're showing you how the thing was framed.
Yeah, we're talking skeletal here. Like this
Absolutely.
is bare
Right.
bones because
Because you could start with the C section.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna
or
look
a B
at,
section or whatever.
We're gonna look at. I mean, what are we gonna talk about? Tool and be like, oh, that's an
Right.
ABBA song, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not how it works.
Yeah. So
or Dream Theater for that matter, where they have 14 parts.
it doesn't have a form. It's through composed. It
Right.
just goes from point to point to point to point, but it doesn't have a repetition. And this
You
is
hear that in film scores too, a lot of the time, where it's just free form. You know, Ludwig
has to be.
Göransson
It
is a great example. It's
has
like
to be.
any of his scores. It's like that is all.
I'd say that's the majority. That's the norm for film scores. Why? The music is there to accompany the narrative of the film.
Right. Which
Right?
is a lot longer than a song would be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in the moment of each little thing. They're non-contiguous. There's nothing things, but it gets into this point of when you get into the great sort of like big Hollywood sort of scores like John Williams and such. And think of the classic ones: Superman, Star Wars,
Indiana Jones.
If you think about Jaws, if you think about any of those things, there is a thematic motif that comes back. How do we know something's important?
When it's loud.
That makes us pay attention to it. But
Yeah,
we don't know
sure.
if it's important or not. We know in music, we know something's important when it repeats.
Oh, right.
Right? That's how we know. It could be a riff. Think of Sweet Home Alabama riff, or think of the beginning of, Pretty Woman, or the beginning of Enter Sandman.
Or the Golden Girls theme song.
Right, or Sanford and
Thank
Son.
you for being a friend.
You know what my favorite TV sitcom theme song
Growing
was?
Pains.
No, not even close. Welcome Back, Kotter.
Oh, Cotter. Yeah.
That was a great song. Welcome back. The dreams. Oh, dude, come on. Great tune. All right. So anyway, that's how we know something's important. Well, if we carry this to the next level, we're going to get into the next big song form, which is ABBA, right? Now, that is also an album and a song on the album by Genesis,
Right.
which loosely follows this format. But basically what we're really talking about is the A is a verse, the B is a chorus, and the C is some kind of contrasting section, which most often is a bridge. Right? It could be a solo, but in a different key or something else. And again, we're not really getting into the real marrow of this, which is how harmony can reflect the different changes. There's lots of songs that have been radio hits in the past. I'm thinking of Fireworks from Katy Perry. it's the same chord progression over and over and over again. Yet you still get a very clear sense of what the verse is and what a chorus is. How's that possible if they're just playing the same chords over and over again?
Right.
The inverse of that is also true, where you have the same type of melodic line in the vocals, but the harmony changes underneath it, and that's what separates.
Right,
the
and not to be
sections.
confused with strophic, though, when you describe Firework, where it's the same chords throughout the whole song.
No.
Dynamically, it changes with the vocal parts. So whether
Yep.
it's not strophic because it is defined different parts of the song.
That's right.
Even though the music's all the same.
Okay, when we talk about the components of an ABBA song form, essentially this is what most people think of as a verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus song form. If we label each one of those parts with a letter, then we would get an ABBA song form essentially, right? With an A being a verse, a B section being a chorus, and a C section being a bridge, or could be a solo.
Why isn't B for bridge?
I know,
man?
right? That would make sense. But the world doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
So we just roll with it.
But you could say that, I mean, honestly, when you look at a lot of songs, like probably a good majority of music that's being put out now is in the ABBA format,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
anything that has a guitar solo, that's waned a little bit more modernly, but anytime that you hear distinctly three different phrasings in a song, it's typically going to be in that format.
Yeah, overwhelming. Yeah, you could push it into that pile for sure.
What about a pre-chorus? You can ask that.
Yeah,
but typically a pre-chorus is just part of the chorus.
Well,
or part of the verse.
It's the pre. I think it's the end of the verse because. So here's the thing.
Wouldn't it be post-verse?
No, because it's a pre-chorus.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean it's a pre-chorus. It means it's pre the chorus.
Yeah.
So that's you know what I mean. It's important to make that distinction. I think because it's part of the verse.
Yeah.
So what does a verse do? The verse is going to be exactly. Let's go back to the rounded binary arias from the Florentine Camerata. What does a verse do? It advances the narrative. It tells the story. And what does a good chorus do? The best way to make a good chorus is complete this sentence. And what I really mean to say is,
Right.
I just call to say I love you.
Yeah,
right? Or whatever.
it's the enunciation of all of the verse.
Right. And each time that chorus comes back and the words are the same, overwhelmingly.
Right. And the second verse is just another description of the chorus.
But
in a lot of ways.
But in a good song, in my opinion, when you get to that second chorus, it means more.
Yeah.
Because you've got a different perspective on it. You know what I mean? And
and you've had two verses to set it up as well.
Yeah.
So you've had two different sets
Yeah.
of storytelling
Yeah.
to make it even pop more.
Yeah, it should have more gravity, right? And then then you go, okay, well, what's the function of a bridge? Here's the great function of a bridge. A bridge is meant to give us a totally different perspective of what is happening. So, for example, in this hypothetical version of a song, I could write a song that basically says, I love you, right? Let's just use cheesy, hackneyed things. Verse 1, I saw you at the candy store. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oh, I think I love you. Verse 2, I followed you home afterwards and
I watched you shower through the window.
Exactly. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that means something different. Okay, perfect. Now, that's good. What happens when we get to the bridge? It may be, but did you notice me? Did you notice, what do your friends think about me? See, the first verses were all about her, or him, whatever. But that bridge is now reflexive on the narrator. Like, what do you think about? Is this going to be a requited love affair? Is there reciprocity here or not? Right? That's what a good bridge does.
Right.
It inverts something to where we get a different perspective, and it kind of gives us a kind of a moment for pause.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really fun and cool.
Yeah, I like when they go back to the chorus and they change a little bit in the third chorus of the lyrics. Is like she got murdered in the bathroom by the stalker.
Damn.
That's what the story's about,
This
right?
went dark, yeah.
I feel like that's what the story was about.
Yeah, in a Stranger Things kind of a way or whatever. Yeah,
well, or just plain murder.
Okay, all right.
Lustful
Then
murder,
There's none of that in the world. Yeah. But yeah.
So anyway,
that's
songs about murder, right?
Yeah, right. We're going to do a whole episode on murder songs. Okay, so yeah. But
I mean, Phil did a song about listening to a guy drown,
Yeah.
not helping him.
No, not helping him. Just saying, hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
It's very dark.
Good job, Phil.
Yeah. So that's typically what an ABACAB song form is, right? So remember, that's the big one, is that when you get into it, you want to go, what does this really do? It's going to answer the following question. And what I really mean to say is, and then it kind of goes into it, right? So a classic one on this one, would be this one. This is right? So if we go into Silk Sonic for a minute.
I approve.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so just kind of guide our way through. You know the lyrics, everybody, but just let's examine the architecture. Sets up this whole story right here, right? Now he's describing the kids and where he was meeting this girl, right? And now he almost died from her ex-husband, right? But he's so in love with her, and it's great. But, oh, wait a minute. Okay, second verse is like, hold on a second. He's getting milked for his money, right? Okay, and now here it is. And what I really mean to say is, I don't know what to do. I'm smoking out the window just trying to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do with my life.
Right.
Right? Yeah, right? That's a good chorus. And that's what all the great choruses are going to do. Great tune. But, think of Turn Your Love Around from George Benson. You can think of Toto from, Africa. You can think of, there's so many great songs.
Toto? Africa?
I know, right? You can think of Toto from Africa.
That song before.
Toto from Africa. Hold on. Dude,
Toto from Africa.
You can think of...
I've heard this song before.
You can think of Africa from Toto, Let me do it again.
No.
Okay.
No. You don't get to.
I don't get to? Okay. So, yeah.
We're having fun.
But I think, all those great songs, the ABACAB songs, are going to be able to really hit those points. And the best ones, at least for me, are the ones where things change harmonically underneath it. So the harmony for the bridge is going to be totally different than something we've heard in the song previously. It could be totally new, and if we blow that into absurd proportions in a lot of ways, this is where prog rock really can come in and make all of these songs that essentially go into all kinds of different directions. And that's what gets us into this final sort of fifth category of it, which is like it's through composed, or it has a logic where there isn't something that repeats back on itself. And these are not hard and fast rules.
Right.
Yeah, it's just sort of like where it is. But what we're trying to really kind of give everyone a sense of is that when you boil it down to its most essential elements, you'll find that most songs are going to fit into one of these categories pretty well. You can at least go, it's stemming from here. Yeah. It may not look like it, but that's pretty much where it originated from.
Okay.
And I think that that's a really great thing to be able to do as a listener, is I advise everybody to do this week. Listen to some of your favorite songs for the architecture now.
Yeah, and see if you can pinpoint it. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. Because we'd love to tell you and help,
Yeah, because think about this. I mean, your favorite writers, your favorite bands, whatever, they're not writing these songs by accident. It's not like they just rolled the dice and it came out.
Right.
They didn't.
Now maybe a hook did, or a riff that's like a starting point or whatever when they're on tour and their sounds. They're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But then they take it for later, and then
you compose.
Right.
You actually start to edit, and you craft this work, whatever it is, and that is where they're very aware. The artist or the band or whatever it is that is your favorite, very aware of the process of organizing this material, so that when it's presented to you, you're allowed to come on the journey and understand what's important and what's not. Just in the same way as if we were cinematographers and we were framing a shot, if everything is in focus equally, then we don't have any idea of what's important. Right. But it's the minute that we start to get depth of field and we can do the focus rack on a particular subject matter within frame, now we're actually able to tell a story. And it might not even be the person who's talking. It might be racking in on the emotional response of someone flinching because someone said something that lets them know they got caught in a lie or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like the person talking might be out of focus, but the other person might be in focus. That's a whole new level of subtlety to it. And that's why we love great movies. That's why we love great literature. That's why we love great music, is when people can bring that level of craft to a song that is something other than, Who Let the Dogs Out or the Macarena, both of which were great songs commercially. But artistically, we'd probably say not a lot of meat on that bone.
Right. Well, let's move on to the fifth form because that's where I generally prefer my music. I'll be honest. I mean, honestly, it's just a lot of the stuff that I listen to is not that formed. I mean, I listen to plenty of that but
Yeah.
I kind of like dwell. I love progressive rock and metal, and a lot of that lives in that zone. But so does Bohemian Rhapsody. I mentioned as a bridge. Not really. That's in a fifth form. I mean, that's a whole magnum opus in a way of its own in its own accord. But I love Rush and stuff and a lot of Led Zeppelin tunes don't fall into your typical song structure as well.
No, they don't, and that's one of the reasons why we like them. I'd put Radiohead even
totally
in that, right? Or even one of my favorite bands and a record we've talked about several times, which is Spirit of Eden, Talk Talk.
Oh yeah,
that does not fall in a neat, tidy way of going, oh, that's an AABA song form.
Right. Typically when your songs are 8 minutes plus, there's more than 4 or 5 parts, so.
Or think about this, ladies and gentlemen, I would put this out there. If you're not in any particular mood, you might be very easily coaxed into listening to the Beach Boys' Good Vibrations. Tell me what song form that's in.
Oh yeah, that song's nuts.
Right? Now you can have extended types of forms. You know what I mean? Like you could have what's called a rondo form where you might have an A, B, A, C, A, D, A, E. You can do that kind of stuff. By the way, all of these forms are very intricately and massively expanded in the classical music genre.
Certainly.
Right? Particularly when we get into late Romanticism and 20th century music. These are epic in proportions where one whole movement of a symphony might be 12 minutes long, and it's only the A section of a 4-movement piece.
That's what I was going to ask you, is that if in a song format, even in an ABBA format, if the bridge is a total escape from the song and does something totally different for 5 minutes, it can just be C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that's where I think that's the reason why we like songs, and we would like to be able to appreciate the narrative of what someone is trying to guide us along. Now, there are songs that are through composed, which don't have any of that, Now, prog is different, because prog is so amazingly technical that each little section actually is very, very well curated and manicured to the point where they want to be in lockstep with each other, and it's a very challenging musical passage, and I love that. But I wouldn't say that the song would be through composed in that sense. Like it didn't have an order to it. It just sort of rambled around. They're very meticulous as to what riff is going to be played at this point, and as it moves from this section to another section.
Yeah, I call it whiteboard metal.
Yeah,
totally.
They
get their whiteboard out and they're like, this is exactly what's happening.
But it's definitely not strophic or AABA or 12-bar blues or an ABBA song form.
A lot of the time not. Yeah.
Right. And
now there are some Rush songs that are totally formulaic, right? Like The Trees or Limelight or
Tom Sawyer.
Tom Sawyer even. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it gets a little crazy into, Priest at the Temple of Syrinx and shit.
Yes. Yeah. When you get into Farewell Kings, you're going to be sort of going, I'm going to scratch my head a little bit on this one.
Yeah. So where did Esquivel and all that kind of stuff is all just free? A lot of it's just free form.
No, a lot of it has very clear sections. It's not in a pop song format necessarily, but the sections are very clear. Because there's not if you listen to Esquivel, like Space Age Bachelor Pad kind of music and some of those other ones, those are really cool, but there's not lyrics. It's do, 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 do.
Or like the Russian guy, the la 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 guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
you have to put a link to that.
Yeah, totally. It'll be in the show notes.
I have PTSD.
You guys know who it is. Yeah. So, who are some of the songwriters in the last 50 years that were good at really good at understanding structure and using those different styles to make their music? Well,
they're usually my favorite artists in that way.
Like XTC?
Well, XTC is definitely up there. But there's more, of course. I mean, Springsteen, Joni Mitchell, Tom Waits, Jackson Browne, John Hyatt.
I think of Billy Joel every time.
Billy Joel, absolutely. There's so many, but they don't just have to be, singer-songwriter types. They could also be bands, or they could just be, one of my favorite lyricists in that way is Nico Case.
Yeah.
I love her music.
She's great.
And what I love about it is that she writes to the words And so sometimes her songs have a very nebulous form. Like it feels like an AABA, but then there's a C section in it, or there's all kinds of things that just sort of go because she's serving the poetry. She's really setting it that way. The Smiths did that, you know, with
when
Morrissey.
I think of Nika, I think of Imogen Heap too.
Yeah, Imogen Heap's good. Yeah, totally good. You know, there's Kimbra. You know,
Kimbra's outstanding.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones.
I saw her one time
Great artist.
at South by Southwest with a sampler and a loop station.
Yeah,
and she did her whole show.
Yeah, right on.
And it was unbelievable. Yeah,
there's so many, and as soon as we stop taping, I'll think of like 50 others. Like,
drop your favorites in the comments, anybody, and I'll probably drop some in the comments too because I like interacting with our own stuff.
I'll tell you what I like the most about songwriting, and this goes for me as a writer. You know, when I'm doing madrigals for mongrels, or even me as under my own name, I'm trying to tell a story, and I'm trying to get as much imagery in there as I can in the coolest way possible that I feel like is compelling but tells the story. If you look at like R&B lyrics, there's generally not a lot of vivid imagery there. You know, if they may go, well, not
you
really.
Ever listen to Maxwell? No, I'm just kidding.
But I'm thinking of like, if somebody like, there's an old adage in Nashville, where it's like, I don't want you to just tell me that you got a new car. I want to smell the leather in your seats. How are you going to make me do that? Right. And so, country music has been particularly influenced by those types of mandates where they're basically trying to be as hyper sort of sensory as possible. They want to engage all your senses. And I think a lot of good writers, not just music, but also just literature writers and also poets, they're able to do that. They're able to engage your senses. So you get a sense of texture, of color, of temperature, of taste. If you can get all of that in a lyric, then you're really writing probably some really good lyrics.
I heard a friend of mine describe a particular smell as, that smells like hot ketchup on the sidewalk in the summertime.
There you go.
And I was like, I've never heard anything described that well before.
Yeah, there you go. And so you got color, you got temperature, and you got smell, all right in with that little bit.
Taste.
Right. Yeah. So see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's like a really good...
It's like, how do you take a few words and get all of those different senses out of them?
Yeah.
How do you describe all of those things in very few words? I think there's an art and magic to that.
Yeah, do it. I mean, I'll quote myself here, but it's like I was in the front seat of a rusted out Dodge, grandma's hand on my knee, right? 8 years old off a strip mine road, she said, there's something you need to see. I saw faded white steeples in the pine trees and a graveyard of tilted stone. Now, where are you right now, right? I've given you that image.
In Eunice, Louisiana.
Yeah, right? You kind of know. And
definitely put me somewhere.
But that song is called the Alabama Blackwater Macedonia Church of Christ. How about that for a long title? Yeah. But it's true. This is like autobiographical stuff. But I'm trying to tell a story of how this happened to me going to a revival when I was a little kid and kissing the preacher's daughters and the kudzu and all that kind of cool stuff that happens under picnic tables, So
and, that's something we didn't talk about in this episode is kind of what you're narrowing in on now is the power of a song, of a well-written song. Mm-hmm. And, content driven. It can be about praising your Lord, right? Yeah. And the energy and the power that goes into singing hymns at church for certain people in different religions, or instruction, or telling a story, or any of those different things that a song can do to arouse all of those emotions inside of you. And like, that's not a structure, that's a talent. That's not something you can lay out in a diagram and say, all right, well, let's do this. Now, you can take a few words and try and do it, but unless it really speaks to what you're trying to convey and really puts that message out there. We talked about arranging the words and having, the verse being, more of a description of what the repetitive hook would be or the repetitive chorus would be, and how you get the power out of that. But I just think messaging and trying to convey your ideas is not something that you can build a structure. It just comes with time and experience and listening to a lot of music and really understanding it deeply. So.
Yeah, and let's just talk about that too, which is the idea of.
I saw your wheels turning.
but the idea of what you're talking about is listening to a lot of music. Yeah, and that's the way that we learn to make music. Because when I was on faculty they started this whole songwriting program, right? And it's a big thing in the United States right now where people are going to school paying $250,000 to become songwriting majors. And I was on the they wanted me to be on the committee to basically say, hey, we want you to evaluate these applicants and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, 6 and up being scholarship potential. And I'm going, I can't, in good faith, I can't do that. Because how do you evaluate what a good song is? These are young women
and you're dictating
men.
what their future is.
These are young women and men that are coming in, they're applying to a program that they don't need to go to,
right?
But that are doing it. And who's going to evaluate them? Myself and some other people that the university has chosen to say,
they've chosen your authoritative bias to make that selection, but it's still.
But how do you? Because I went into the committee and I said, on what basis am I trying to evaluate this song?
Right.
And you know what they came back to me with? Commercial appeal.
That was my.
So
the business end of it for the school would be songwriting for consumerism,
right? And that's where I said I'm out.
Yeah, and I could understand that,
right? Because I don't buy any of that. Because the Macarena and Who Let the Dogs Out and a lot of other shitty songs that are out there are commercially great songs.
Yeah, they're trying to teach you how to make Pepsi ads.
Yeah. And no one needs to go to
Coke.
school. No one needs to go to school to do that.
Right.
If you're going to go to school to better yourself.
Yeah. So if let's say I was the dean of that school, it's like, here's your curriculum.
Yeah.
And it would be a bunch of songs to listen to. See ya. Let me know when you've heard them all.
This is what I would do. So when I would get composition majors that would come in that were in the program, because eventually I would end up getting them, even though I was off of the committee. I would give them and I'd be like, hey, I like your song. Your lyrics kind of remind me of some early Dylan. And they're like, who's Bob Dylan? Or they might go, I've heard of Bob Dylan, but I've never listened to him. I go, okay, well, let's go listen to Highway 61. And what I want you to do is I want you to analyze every song on that album and come back to me and tell me about his lyric writing and how is he able to get the point across in there. And so I would able to do it because that's how you learn to write a great song is by studying a great songwriter and how they learn to shape the words and the poetry and everything else, as well as the music. If they're great musicians, some are, some aren't. Like Elton John and Bertie Taupin is a wonderful partnership, but one does one and the other does the other, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. But it's like, go ahead and just get into that, because if you don't understand that you're crossing your metaphors, or that you are unaware that you are grammatically incorrect, or you're putting the wrong, stress on the wrong syllable.
Right.
Right.
And depending on what you're trying to do for an outcome, your grammar might be incorrect, but that just might mean you're making country music.
And if you want that, that's right. And if you want that, fine.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing it because you don't know any better, then that's ignorance, and that's why you need to go. But you don't need to go to get a college degree.
I think the other part too, I agree. And the other part about learning to write music is meet and play with as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Because on the spot, you never know what can happen between. You might even play a different style of music than the other people, but you never know what can happen in those moments. And I've had my most creative moments when I am playing with someone else in my life. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and it's ironic that I'm saying this as a doctorate.
Yeah.
But I went to school.
But you didn't go to school for songwriting.
No, I went for stuff that I couldn't get anyone to teach me, which is how can I write for film and TV? How can I write a symphony, or write a mass, or write electroacoustic stuff, or learn how to improvise in a very esoteric way? That was just kind of the way I was wired.
Right.
So it made sense for me, but to do something like, hey, I want to write the next, Let's Get Drunk and Screw country song, flavor of the month, dude, just listen to country radio.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways, and
not that I'm bagging on country.
Well,
I'm just saying,
we're not bagging on it.
There's a lot of really great.
We can make fun of all genres of music.
Yeah, and there's a lot. We've got a lot of friends here in Nashville that write professionally, and they're really good at it. But they're really, really good at writing commercial country songs.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for them to go ahead and write the next, like, Ring Them Bells. I want you to write Ring Them Bells, which is a Bob Dylan song. If you've never heard it, go read the lyrics. And if you don't cry by the time that you're done with that, we can't be friends.
Sure.
But, and listen to Sarah Jarosz, her recording of Ring Them Bells, which has Jerry Douglas on dobro and Vince Gill playing, and it's a one take. She does Bob's songs, like many artists do Bob songs better than Bob does.
Right, sure.
But that one in particular is a song that I wish I wrote. Ring Them Bells is a masterpiece of what does it mean to be on this planet and what am I doing with my life.
Yeah, wow.
I love that.
And I know the song. I haven't heard the cover, which I would probably be interested in hearing for sure. I have one. Here's my rec.
Yeah.
And then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, what is it?
So Stephen Wilson Jr.
Okay.
wrote a song called I'm a Song. It's not on any of his records.
Oh, yeah.
He performed it at the print shop in Printer's Alley here in Nashville, and it was on a podcast. And when I say that, I don't understand why it hasn't been recorded like for a regular studio record, and maybe it has at this point, but as far as I know, it hasn't. But he describes being a song.
Right.
And it's just a really interesting take and really beautifully written. Also, I would challenge you, if you really intently listen to this song, it's hard to not tear up because it really speaks to all of these moments that we have in our lives, and it really translates well into a song. So
I love it.
Anyway, that's all I got today.
That's all I got.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Comment, subscribe, do whatever. Don't care. Any interaction's great. We love you. We're gonna do some giveaways soon. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
We're trying to get our listening count up, and we need some help. So
yeah,
let
ladies
people
and gentlemen,
know.
yeah, anything you can do to help us out, let us know, because we appreciate you listening, but we also love it when you can recommend it to other friends.
Yeah.
And let them know about it too, because the more we grow the family, the more fun that we can all have.
And with that, Earworm out.
Earworm out.
Right, song styles like AABA Cab, never sung by Captain Ahab. Earworm stuck in my mind, can't get it out this time. Yo-ho, earworm blows the sails of the song ship, there she goes. Right.